"Wait, don't go." The words tore out of him before he even realized. But she was already walking away. Adeze Okonkwo, a single mother of 7, moved through the crowded streets of Lagos as if nothing had happened. Her heels clicked against the wet pavement, each step carrying the weight of disappointment, exhaustion, and pride. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Inside the sleek conference room of Edencorp Towers, Mr. Io Obi, the billionaire CEO, leaned forward in his chair, heart pounding. She had just walked out after failing the interview, yet something in her words, something in the way she had spoken about her life, made him feel like he had let the world slip through his fingers. He grabbed his coat, and without thinking, he ran after her, weaving through honking cars, street hawkers, and startled pedestrians. But would he catch her? And if he did, what could he possibly say to change a life that seemed already lost? Adeze had woken up that morning before dawn. Her tiny apartment smelled of yesterday's cooking and the faint scent of laundry drying in the corner. She kissed Chijioke, her 7-year-old son, on the forehead, careful not to wake him. "I'll be back soon, my son. Pray for me," she whispered, though her own heart was full of fear. Today was the day. The job interview that could finally lift them out of struggle. The one opportunity that could give her child a better future, pay the rent, and fill their empty fridge. She arrived at Edencorp Towers, soaked from the rain. Her blouse clung to her skin, and her shoes left tiny puddles on the marble floor. The receptionist's polite smile barely reached her eyes. "They're ready for you," she said, guiding Adeze into the glass conference room. At the head of the table sat Mr. Io Obi, sharp, confident, and intimidating in his white suit. His eyes studied her like a puzzle. Adeze felt small under his gaze, but she squared her shoulders. She couldn't let fear take over. The interview started formally, with questions about her experience, her skills, and her knowledge of business. Adeze answered carefully, but she stumbled. Her mind went blank on technical questions she had studied all night. Her confidence wavered. She could feel the judgment in every glance, every pause. Then came the question that cut the deepest. "Why should I hire you, Adeze?" Her heart skipped. She thought of Chijioke waiting at home, of the empty apartment, of all the nights she cried herself to sleep. She swallowed hard. "Because I may not be perfect on paper," she said, her voice soft but steady. "But I am someone who never gives up. I fall, I fail, but I always try again. I will work harder than anyone else because I want to make a better life for my son and for this company." For a brief moment, the room was silent. Mr. Obi's expression softened just a little, but professionalism returned quickly. "I'm sorry," he said. "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." The words hit Adeze like a punch to the chest. She nodded, forced a polite smile, and walked out of the building with her head held high, even though her heart was breaking. Outside, Lagos roared with life, indifferent to her despair. Her shoes splashed in puddles, vendors shouted, cars honked, but she didn't hear any of it. She only thought of Chijioke and how she had promised him that she would make things better. Today, she had failed. What Adeze didn't know was that the words she had spoken, the ones filled with honesty and quiet strength, had stuck with Mr. Obi. Her courage, her heart, had touched him in a way no resume ever could. And he wasn't going to let her walk away. Mr. Obi bursts out of Edencorp Towers, running through the chaotic streets of Lagos after a woman who had already decided to give up, leaving the city and their fate on the edge of a single heartbeat. The streets of Lagos never stopped moving. Cars honked, motorcycles weaved between them, street hawkers shouted over the noise. But Adeze felt like she was walking through a different world, one that moved too fast for her to catch up. Her heels clicked against the uneven pavement as she clutched her bag to her chest, her mind heavy with disappointment. She tried not to cry. She really did. Tears were weak. Pride was everything she had left, but her chest ached with a hollow emptiness. Every step reminded her that she had just lost something she could not afford to lose a chance at a better life. When she reached the corner, where a small streetlight flickered, she leaned against the wall for a moment. She closed her eyes and tried to remember why she had started this journey. Chijioke, her 7-year-old son, was waiting at home, counting on her. Every night, he would pray that she would find a good job. He didn't understand bills or the endless struggle of being a single mother in a city that demanded perfection from those who had nothing. All he knew was that he loved his mother, and he trusted her. Adaise's heart tightened. She pictured him sitting at their small wooden table, the single light bulb flickering above him, his schoolbooks open but untouched because he had been waiting for her. She had promised him things would change, and now she felt she had failed him. Her life had never been easy. She had grown up in a small village in Anambra State, the youngest of 5 children. Her father had died when she was 10, leaving her mother to struggle alone. She had learned early that life demanded strength, that no one would hand her anything for free. When she became a mother at 21, the weight of responsibility doubled. The father of her child left before she even gave birth, promising he would return, but never did. From that day on, Adaise had become both mother and father to Chijioke. She worked odd jobs, selling fruits at the market, cleaning offices, tutoring children after school, anything that could keep them afloat. But no matter how hard she worked, life seemed to pull her back, always testing her resolve. And yet, she had never given up. She remembered the night she had stayed awake for hours, stitching torn uniforms for Chijioke's school just so he wouldn't be embarrassed. She remembered the days she skipped meals to make sure he had something in his lunchbox. She remembered the nights she cried herself to sleep, listening to him breathe peacefully, silently thanking him for giving her a reason to keep fighting. Adaise shook her head, trying to push away the memories. There was no time for self-pity. She had to keep moving. She walked past the crowded bus stop, ignoring the calls of men trying to sell her snacks, shoes, and airtime. Her bag, heavy with her ruined resume and a few coins she had scraped together, felt like a stone on her shoulder. She had never felt more invisible in a city full of people, yet paradoxically so exposed, and then came the sound she wasn't expecting. "Wait, miss, please." Her heart skipped a beat. She turned sharply. Across the street, running between the cars like a man possessed, was Mr. Aobi, the CEO. Her first instinct was disbelief. This was impossible. Why would a billionaire care enough to run after her? She glanced at the traffic, at the people watching in confusion and mild amusement. He was a stranger. She didn't owe him anything. So she kept walking, hoping he would stop. But he didn't. He weaved between cars, dodged hawkers, and shouted her name, his polished white suit now smeared with dirt and rain. "Miss! Adaise!" Adaise's mind raced. Was this a joke? Was someone filming a prank? She could almost laugh if she wasn't so angry and scared. "Who does this?" she muttered under her breath. "A billionaire running in the street for me. Ridiculous." Yet something in his eyes, determined, urgent, almost desperate, made her stop for a fraction of a second. Her chest pounded. Her mind was torn between fleeing and facing this man who refused to accept her rejection. "Please," he shouted again, closer now. "You have to hear me." Her pride screamed at her to ignore him. She had walked away once, and she could walk away again. She didn't need anyone's pity. She didn't need a handout. She had survived this long on her own. But there was curiosity in her hesitation. He was panting, running as though the city itself were against him. The words on his face said more than he could possibly speak while chasing her across Lagos. She finally stopped at a street corner, turning to face him fully. "Why are you running after me?" she asked, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and frustration. "I failed your stupid interview. I walked away. You don't need me." Mr. Obi slowed, finally close enough that he could catch his breath. He wiped the sweat from his brow, but his eyes never left hers. "It's not about the interview," he said quietly, almost ashamed of how much he felt. It's what you said. The way you spoke about your life, your strength, your son. I can't stop thinking about it. You shouldn't walk away thinking this is over." Adaise's heart sank. Pride and disbelief battled in her chest. She didn't trust words. People had promised her jobs, help, and support before, only to leave her empty-handed. "And what exactly do you want from me?" she asked sharply, her voice tinged with suspicion. "I want to give you a chance," he said, his voice steady now, no longer panicked but firm. "A real chance. Not because of your resume, not because of skills alone, but because of who you are. You are honest, you are strong, you care, and those things matter more than any paper." She blinked, unsure if she was hearing him right. Her world had taught her that people only cared about results, about numbers, about what could make them richer or more powerful. Not about courage. Not about heart. Daisy shook her head, almost laughing at the absurdity of it all. You're saying, you're offering me a job because of my heart? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Obi nodded. Yes, because I've learned something tonight. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who don't give up, even when the world tells them to. And I don't want to lose that strength. For the first time that day, Daisy felt her chest loosen. She could feel hope stirring, tentative, fragile, but real. Her pride wouldn't let her show it yet. She stayed silent, studying him, testing if this was real or just another cruel trick. And then she thought of Chijioke. She thought of the empty fridge, the rent due next week, the bills piling higher and higher. She thought of all the nights she had worked until her fingers bled just to keep them afloat. Could this stranger really change everything for them? Her heart told her to run, to protect herself from disappointment. But something deep down whispered, maybe this is the chance you've been waiting for. Maybe this is the moment your life changes. And just like that, the world seemed to pause for Daisy, teetering between despair and hope, fear and courage. Adaez stands on the edge of a decision that could change everything. Accept the billionaire's unexpected offer and risk her pride. Or walk away, protecting herself but possibly losing the chance to save her son's future forever. Adaez's hands trembled as she walked through the sliding glass doors of Edencorp Towers. The smell of polished wood and expensive cologne hit her immediately. Her shoes clicked on the marble floor, a sound so sharp it made her feel small, exposed, and painfully aware of how out of place she was. Behind her, Mr. Obi followed quietly, no longer running but moving with the kind of calm authority that made everyone in the lobby glance up and whisper. He didn't introduce her to the receptionist. He didn't announce her arrival, but Daisy could feel his presence beside her, steady and unyielding, like a shield against the intimidation of the building itself. I don't understand, Daisy stammered, glancing around at the walls lined with gold-framed awards and photographs of Obi shaking hands with presidents and celebrities. Why? Why are you giving me this chance? Mr. Obi stopped and turned to face her. His eyes were calm but intense. Because sometimes what matters isn't what you've done, it's who you are. And you have something most people don't. A heart that refuses to break, no matter how many times the world tries to crush it. I want to see what you can do when given a real opportunity. Daisy shook her head, half laughing, half crying. I don't know if I can. I've never worked in a place like this. I've barely worked in offices. Most of my life has been surviving. And yet here you are, Obi said softly, surviving and still standing. That's why I chose you. Her pride flared. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to owe anyone. But she also couldn't ignore the flutter of hope in her chest, the tiny, fragile ember that whispered this could be the start of something better. Obi led her to a small office, much less intimidating than the grand boardroom, but still far removed from anything Daisy had ever known. A secretary greeted her politely, and a young man handed her a tablet with schedules, tasks, and introductions. Daisy's fingers hovered over it nervously. Every number, every graph, every project name was foreign. She felt a wave of panic rising. I don't know if I can do this, she murmured, almost to herself. You can, Obi said. And you will. I didn't offer you this job because it's easy. I offered it to you because it's necessary. And necessary things are worth learning. Daisy nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She tried to imagine herself succeeding, but her mind kept flashing back to Chijioke, to the nights they had gone hungry, to the constant fear that she wasn't enough. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders, heavier than ever. Her first day began with introductions. Staff members glanced at her curiously. Some whispered. Some stared openly. Daisy felt the sting of judgment, the invisible walls erected by wealth and experience. She noticed the perfectly tailored suits, the confidence in their posture, the effortless way they spoke. And then she noticed herself, her plain blouse, her worn shoes, the faint smell of rain still clinging to her hair. She almost wanted to turn and run. Almost. But Obi's voice echoed in her mind. You have a heart that refuses to break. The first assignment was simple, but it felt monumental. Reviewing a project proposal that would decide millions in investments. Adaez sat at her desk, her fingers trembling over the tablet, trying to follow charts, financial projections, and technical jargon she had barely encountered before. She reread the documents over and over, taking notes, asking questions, trying desperately not to look foolish. By lunchtime, she was exhausted. Her stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since early morning. She considered skipping lunch entirely. Old habits die hard, but a small voice inside told her she couldn't. She needed strength for this new life, for Chijioke. As she walked to the cafeteria, she overheard some staff whispering. "Who is she?" one woman asked, clearly skeptical. "She's the one Obi picked," another replied, shaking her head. "Seems like he's losing it. Look at her shoes." Adaez's cheeks burned. She wanted to disappear, to shrink into the shadows. But then she remembered Chijioke waiting for her at home, believing she could do anything. She squared her shoulders, held her head high, and walked past them without a word. Obi watched silently from across the room. He didn't intervene. He didn't need to. She was already proving herself in ways she didn't know. Every step, every glance, every refusal to shrink under scrutiny was a victory. The day grew harder. Tasks came faster than she could process. Staff members questioned her work, sometimes impatiently, sometimes dismissively. Adaez's hands shook as she tried to respond, but she noticed something strange every time she answered with honesty, with effort, with careful thought. Obi would nod silently from his office, almost as if he were rooting for her. And then came the first real challenge, a client meeting. Obi had invited her along, and for the first time, Adaez stood in a room with powerful people who expected perfection. She felt tiny, insignificant. Her voice caught when she tried to speak. But then she saw Obi glance at her, a reassuring look, and she remembered the words she had told him in the streets of Lagos. "I never give up." She took a deep breath. She listened carefully. She answered honestly when asked questions she didn't fully understand. She admitted when she didn't know something, but promised she would learn. And slowly, the room shifted. The client nodded. They listened. They respected her effort. It wasn't perfect. Far from it. But it was real. After the meeting, Obi walked her back to her desk. "You did well," he said quietly. "Better than I expected." Adaez felt a flicker of pride, but pushed it down. Pride was dangerous. She couldn't let herself get carried away. She had seen how easily hope could be taken away, how quickly life could crumble. Yet, as the day ended and she left the building, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. A small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, she could rise above the struggles that had defined her life. But the city of Lagos was unforgiving. As she walked home through the evening traffic, she sensed danger she couldn't quite name. Her bag was heavier than usual. She felt eyes on her, whispers in the dark. Not all of the city's challenges came from the office. And then it happened. A hand grabbed her bag. Hard. Adaez screamed, spinning around to face a man in a dark hoodie trying to snatch her belongings. Her heart raced. She tried to pull back, but he was strong. "Let go!" she shouted. Before she could react, a shadow fell over the attacker, Mr. Obi. His coat flared as he grabbed the man by the shoulder, yanking him away from Adaez. The man cursed and ran. Obi turned to her, breathing hard. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice low and steady. Adaez's legs felt weak. Her bag was in her hand, but her body trembled. Yes, thank you," she stammered. Obi studied her, his face unreadable. "This city, it's harsh," he said, "but I won't let anyone stop you from what you deserve. Not now, not ever." Adaez looked at him, and for the first time, she felt something shift. Fear, yes. Exhaustion, yes. But beneath it, a spark, a belief that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to face the world alone anymore. As Adaez walks home that night, exhausted but alive, she doesn't know that someone has been watching her since the office, someone who doesn't want to see her succeed. Danger is coming, and her fight is only beginning. Adaez's first week at Edencorp Towers had been a whirlwind, but nothing prepared her for what came next. The office, which had seemed like a new world full of possibilities, quickly revealed its harsher side. Not everyone was ready to accept a single mother who had stumbled through an interview, yet somehow earned the CEO's favor. Whispers followed her wherever she went. Meetings that were already intimidating felt sharper, colder, as eyes flicked to her shoes, her blouse, the faint scent of rain that never quite washed away. Did Obi really hire her? A woman whispered behind her back. She has no experience. It's embarrassing. Daisy clenched her fists under her desk, telling herself to ignore them. Pride had always been her shield. She had survived ridicule before. She could survive this too. But it was harder than she expected. The first real test came in the form of a high-stakes project. Obi handed her the responsibility of overseeing a charity initiative. Eden Corp was funding a program meant to empower underprivileged children in Lagos. On paper, it sounded perfect. In reality, it was a nightmare. The deadline was tight, the budget limited, and the staff she needed to manage looked at her as if she were a mistake waiting to happen. Vendors ignored her calls. Clients questioned her authority, and every mistake, small or imagined, was amplified by those eager to see her fail. One afternoon, Adeze sat in her office, head in her hands. Her eyes stung from staring at spreadsheets for hours. She was exhausted, mentally and physically. Every cell phone notification felt like an accusation. Every email, a test she might fail. And then, her phone buzzed with a message from Chijioke. "Mom, I finished my homework. Did you eat?" Her chest tightened. He hadn't complained, he hadn't yelled, he just trusted her to come home and care for him. The thought brought a lump to her throat, and suddenly all the frustration, all the whispers, all the fear of failing became fuel. She lifted her head, straightened her shoulders, and took a deep breath. She couldn't fail. Not for herself, not for him. Adeze returned to the office with renewed determination. She began calling vendors back, negotiating politely but firmly. She organized meetings with the staff, learning to navigate their egos and resistance. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to earn respect. Small victories stacked upon each other. A vendor agreeing to deliver on time, a staff member finally acknowledging her ideas, a client complimenting the thoroughness of her report. But just as she began to feel the first glimmer of confidence, obstacles appeared in ways she hadn't anticipated. One morning, she walked into her office to find her chair pushed back, papers scattered, and a note on her desk. "You don't belong here. Give up before you embarrass yourself further." Her hands shook as she picked up the note. She felt the familiar pull of despair, the urge to run, to leave and never look back. The city, the office, the world itself seemed determined to crush her. Then she remembered Obi, his belief in her. The way he had run through Lagos, chasing after her when she thought all hope was lost. If he could believe in her like that, she could believe in herself. Adeze wiped her tears and began picking up the papers. Each folded sheet, each disrupted schedule became a symbol of her resilience. She would not be intimidated, she would not be broken. But the challenges didn't stop there. A meeting with the board of directors turned into a trial by fire. Some members openly questioned her competence. "Are you sure Obi made the right choice?" one asked, her tone dripping with condescension. "She has no experience in large-scale projects." Adeze took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of every eye in the room, some skeptical, some amused, some silently rooting for her to fail. She spoke calmly. "I may not have the experience you expect, but I have dedication, I have honesty, and I have the ability to learn quickly. I am committed to making this project a success for the children, for this company, and for everyone who trusted me to do this work." The room was silent. Even the hardest critics couldn't deny the sincerity in her voice. Obi, sitting quietly in the corner, gave her a small nod of approval. Still, the pressure didn't ease. Late nights became the norm. Her apartment smelled of unfinished meals and laundry that piled up, ignored. She barely slept, haunted by the fear of failure and the desire to give Chijioke a life he deserved. She questioned herself constantly. Am I enough? Am I strong enough? Do I belong in this world? Then came the day that tested her resolve the most. A crucial client called, furious about a misunderstanding in the charity project. The client threatened to pull out, which would not only ruin the project, but damage Eden Corp's reputation. Adeze's stomach twisted. She knew this was her moment. She could either crumble or rise. She took a deep breath, called the client, and spoke with calm authority. She admitted the error, explained how she would fix it, and offered solutions. She listened patiently to every complaint, never losing her temper, never promising what she couldn't deliver. By the end of the call, the client's anger had softened, and they agreed to continue working with her. Adaze leaned back in her chair, exhausted, but alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. She had survived the test. She had fought for herself, for her son, and for the trust that Obi had placed in her. But the office world was not done testing her. That evening, as she walked home, she sensed eyes following her. Lagos felt colder, more dangerous. Someone had been watching her every move, studying her weaknesses, waiting for the right moment to strike. Adaze's instincts screamed at her to hurry, to not look back. Her heart pounded, her mind raced. Every shadow seemed alive, every corner a potential threat. She clutched her bag tightly, her knuckles white, as she navigated the darkened streets. And then, just as she rounded a corner near her apartment building, a man stepped out of the shadows. His face was partially hidden, but his intentions were clear. Before she could react, he lunged at her. Her bag was grabbed, and she stumbled. Panic rose like a wave, threatening to pull her under. But then, as if by fate, a familiar voice rang out. "Adias." She turned, and there he was, Mr. Obi, running toward her again. His coat flared behind him, his eyes fierce, determined, unyielding. Without hesitation, he grabbed the attacker, pulling him away with a strength that startled both of them. The man cursed and fled into the darkness, leaving Adaze trembling but unharmed. Obi turned to her, breathing hard, eyes blazing. "Are you okay?" Adaze nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I think so." "Good," he said, "because the world is going to test you." Adaze, "Hard, but I promised you I won't let it break you. Not now, not ever." She looked at him, a mix of fear, gratitude, and disbelief swirling in her chest. For the first time, she realized something profound. She didn't have to face this world alone. Someone believed in her, even when she doubted herself. Her journey was far from over. The office would continue to challenge her. Lagos would continue to test her, and the person who had been watching her, the one who wanted to see her fail, was still out there. But for the first time, Adaze felt ready. Not perfect, not invincible, but ready. As Adaze reaches her apartment that night, a shadow watches her from across the street, unseen. Danger is closer than she knows, and the fight to protect her dream and her son is only beginning. Adaze stood at the threshold of her small apartment, her bag heavy with unfinished work, her body aching from another long day at Edencorp. The city around her hummed with life, the honking of cars, shouting vendors, and distant music blending into a chaotic symphony. But tonight, the sounds barely registered. Her thoughts were consumed by the strange events of the past week, the challenges she had faced, the victories she had earned, and the shadow that had been following her since the office. She had survived attempts to intimidate her, whispered judgments, and even a direct attack. But Lagos was relentless, and she knew that just surviving wasn't enough. She had to prove herself, not just to the office, or to Obi, but to herself. As she pushed open her door, Chijioke ran to her, his face lighting up with a smile that melted her exhaustion instantly. "Mom, you're back!" he exclaimed, throwing his arms around her legs. Adaze hugged him tightly, feeling the warmth of his trust and love. "I'm here, my son. I'm here," she whispered, holding him as if letting go might mean losing everything she had fought for. They sat down to a simple meal, and as Chijioke talked about his day at school, Adaze's mind wandered back to Obi and the opportunity he had given her. She remembered his words on the street. "You have a heart that refuses to break." And now she realized how true they were. She wasn't perfect. She had stumbled, faltered, and almost given up, but she was still standing. The next morning, Adaze returned to Edencorp with renewed determination. Today was important. A major investor was visiting to review the charity project she had been managing. Obi had trusted her to lead the presentation, and she knew that failure was not an option, not for herself, not for Chijioke, and not for the children who relied on the program. She arrived early, setting up her materials, rehearsing her talking points in the quiet office before the staff arrived. The minutes dragged, but she refused to let anxiety control her. She reminded herself of all she had overcome in the past week. The doubt, the judgment, the danger, the long nights. Every challenge had prepared her for this moment. When the investor arrived, Adaze stood tall. She greeted him politely, her voice steady, her hands calm despite the pounding of her heart. She began the presentation, explaining every detail of the project, the budget, the logistics, the impact on the children, and the ways the company could continue to make a difference. Questions came quickly, some sharp, some skeptical. Adeze answered honestly, admitting when she didn't know something and promising solutions she could deliver. She didn't pretend. She didn't exaggerate. She spoke with the kind of quiet strength that comes from surviving hardship and never giving up. By the end of the meeting, the investor's skeptical expression had softened. He shook her hand firmly. "You have impressed me," he said. "I have seen many presentations, but rarely have I seen someone speak with such honesty, clarity, and conviction. You will make a difference here." A wave of relief and pride washed over Adeze. She had done it. Against all odds, she had succeeded not because she was perfect, but because she refused to quit. Obi, who had been observing silently, finally stepped forward. His face was calm, but his eyes reflected pride. "I told you, Adeze," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "It's not about experience on paper. It's about heart, dedication, perseverance. You have all of it." Adeze's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but words failed her. She nodded instead, letting her eyes say what her heart felt. Gratitude, relief, and disbelief that someone had seen her worth when the world had almost ignored her. But as the applause faded and the investor left, Adeze sensed a shift in the office. Not everyone had been pleased with her success. Some staff members avoided her gaze, while others muttered under their breath. The office was a battlefield, and victory here did not mean the fight was over. That evening, as she walked home with Chijioke, the shadows of Lagos seemed less threatening. She had survived threats, she had faced judgment, and she had stood her ground. She knew there would be more challenges, more obstacles, but for the first time in years, she believed in herself. She believed that no matter what life threw at her, she could rise. Then, just as she reached her apartment building, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Her heart skipped a beat. She turned slowly and froze. It was the man who had attacked her days earlier. His eyes were dark, filled with malice. He stepped closer, hands clenched, ready to strike. Before she could react, a shadow fell over him. "Mr. Obi." Again. "You won't touch her," Obi said, his voice low and dangerous. In a single movement, he grabbed the man, pinning him against the wall until the attacker could do nothing but squirm. Police sirens wailed in the distance as passers-by began to gather. Adeze's heart raced, but she didn't panic this time. She stood beside Obi, feeling a sense of safety she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. He had saved her once. He had believed in her when she had doubted herself. Now, he was there again. The attacker was taken away, and Adeze finally allowed herself to breathe. Obi turned to her, eyes softening. "This city will test you, Adeze. People will doubt you, danger will follow you, and life will try to knock you down. But you are stronger than you know." Tears sprang to her eyes, unbidden and unstoppable. She wanted to speak, to say everything she felt, gratitude, fear, pride, hope. But words failed her. Obi smiled gently, understanding without needing to hear them. Days passed, and the charity project flourished under her care. Staff who had doubted her began to respect her. Vendors who had refused to cooperate now sought her guidance. Even the harshest critics in the office could not ignore her dedication and results. Adeze's life was changing, slowly but surely. She had a job she excelled in, a son who admired her more than ever, and a sense of pride she had thought was lost forever. But perhaps the most important change was within herself. She realized that strength, honesty, and perseverance could open doors that talent and credentials alone could not. One evening, as she left the office, Obi caught up to her in the lobby. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a contract, not just for the project she had been working on, but a permanent position at Eden Corp with room to grow and lead. Adeze stared at it, stunned. She had never expected this. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Obi watched her carefully, smiling softly. "Your work has proven one thing," he said. "Talent can be taught. Heart cannot. And you have more heart than anyone I've ever met. Don't waste it." Adeze finally smiled, the weight of doubt lifting from her shoulders. She looked down at Chijioke, who had been watching her proudly from the steps, and felt a surge of hope. For the first time in her life, she believed that her struggles had led her to this moment and that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As they walked home together, hand in hand, Lagos seemed brighter, warmer, and full of possibility. Adaze had been tested, challenged, and pushed to the edge, but she had emerged victorious, stronger than ever. And as she looked up at the sky, she whispered a quiet promise to herself. No matter what life throws her way, she would never stop fighting, never stop believing, and never let go of her heart. For Adaze, the single mother who had walked away from a failed interview, life was no longer about surviving. It was about thriving, and nothing could take that from her now. Adaze's journey shows that courage, perseverance, and heart can change a life forever. But as she steps into her new life, Lagos continues to challenge her, reminding her that true strength is not the absence of struggle, it is the choice to rise, again and again, no matter how heavy the world becomes.